Hi, I'm an old guy who watches Doctor Who, and I have for a very long time.
So, I've been here before. In the days since the BBC announcement, there have been many voices stating how Doctor Who could be fixed. Most of these I don't think are helpful, which is to be expected. Some are nasty, cruel, bitter cries against women, blacks, or South Asian people, or whatever group they happen to hate. And one of those voices belongs to Gareth Roberts. And because he did write for the show at one point, he managed to get his thoughts published. And if you don't know who Gareth is, well, he's someone easy to dismiss with a couple easy cheap shots. But I don't want to do that. Okay, yes I do. I really do. Just a little. Gareth is a conspiracy-minded right-wing loon with a victim complex, best known for his transphobic comments, his Islamophobic comments, fondness for slurs, pro-Brexit stance, stating that LGBT activists were irrational and part of a cult, plus a little anti-science thrown in. He's the sort of asshole that says woke a lot. And for him, the leftist woke mob includes the British Conservative Party and Budweiser. Yeah, those are lefties to him. His main criticism of the show recently was that Rose Noble existed. And since RTD had some kind of interaction with Gareth, I'm betting Conrad, from Lucky Day, is in part based on him. There's more, but let's just say he was kicked out of a Whoniverse anthology book for a reason. Okay, but being a terrible person doesn't necessarily mean his views on the show are all terrible. He did write for it, briefly. So, cheap shot number 2, he wrote Closing Time and The Caretaker. Yeah, I don't think the place to look for advice for the future of the show is from the author of Closing Time. Yeah, cheap shot, I know. So let's get to the content of his article. 20 Ways to Fix Doctor Who, published June 16th. Except for his pre-numbered list comment that the show should be kept dead for 10 years, because apparently IPs are living beings that heal, his suggestions are not just ones that apply to the future. That is, he's not talking about things that have been done too often, so they should be moved away from to find something fresh. No, his thoughts apply equally to the past as well as the future, which is useful, as we can see how his ideas would have affected the show we had. And this includes the classic show, as he is a Classic Who kind of guy. I'm not going to go point by point. There are 20 and not all require comment. A few of his points are reasonable and might have been good if he was talking about mild suggestions instead of hard and fast rules. But even then, he tends to add something to make me roll my eyes, such as, the show should be joyful. Yes, but he continues that it should be a trifle. Insignificance is not a plus in art or entertainment. Let's start with number 1, because it isn't stupid for the series, like others of his points. It's just stupid, and demonstrates what we are dealing with. The character is called Doctor Who. Therefore, his name in the end credits should be Doctor Who. Really? Why? He says it makes a production look quite mad to call him the Doctor. Yes, his view is that calling a guy who always goes by the Doctor in the credits makes you look insane. Okay, this is trivial. It really doesn't matter, but it sure seems to me that crediting someone by the name they go by is rather sane. But then Gareth has a history of not liking to call people by the names they prefer, so I'm thinking I know where his grumbling comes from. He goes on, in that same point, to say that those who travel with Doctor Who are his friends or his assistants, not companions. I'm guessing he read that the co-stars were called assistants in the 1970s by the production staff, and he can't get over it. Again, it's trivial. This is not going to help or harm the future of the show, and all the more trivial because it is not something brought up a whole bunch in the show, but mostly in fandom. And yeah, Gareth, good idea to police fandom. My own preference is for companion, as it's short for traveling companion, which is what they are. They don't necessarily assist. And when I hear assistant, I think of when a cashier at the department store is having problems. Would a sales assistant report to aisle 5? And I invite my friends over to watch a movie, not to risk their lives facing fascist pepper pots or getting caught in the gravitational forces of a black hole. So yeah, not harmful to the show, but this point is just silly to include in your fixing screed. His point number 3 is where I run into real problems. Unfortunately, others have said something similar. This is always, primarily, a children's show for ages 5 to 12. And that's all it should be. Not for adults, actively not for teens, and, his number 4 point, aggressively not for science fiction fans. Just children. The problem with children's programming, and yeah, I'm not the first to say this, is that in execution, it often talks down to children. It simplifies everything, taking out the possibility of learning and growth. Meanwhile, family programming can have things in it a child may not understand yet, but in watching, learn. And it can be shared by the whole family. But I'll drop the broad commentary and go to specifics. The golden age of Classic Who is the Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes era. That's as close to a universal statement of the show as can be made. It takes work to find someone who doesn't think that Hinchcliffe and Holmes made the best Classic Who. Genesis of the Daleks, Pyramids of Mars, The Brain of Morbius, The Face of Evil, The Robots of Death, The Talons of Wen-Chiang, and these were not made solely for children.
No, I don't think it was ever intended to be just for children. It's not made by the children's department. It's made by the drama group in the BBC, and it's always been classified as family entertainment.
They were making a family drama show, not a children's show, but children loved it. So, Gareth's suggestion? Don't make Genesis of the Daleks. Great. And what ended the Hinchcliffe-Holmes era? It was jerks like Gareth complaining. Oh, okay, that's Classic Who. What about NuWho? Human Nature, The Family of Blood, Heaven Sent. Those are not primarily for children. Yeah, Gareth's suggestion, don't make Heaven Sent. Huh. Also, Dalek, The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, Blink, Turn Left, The Girl Who Waited, Vincent and the Doctor, all parts of a family show that adults, teens, sci-fi fans, and children can enjoy. But yeah, shouldn't have made any of those. I'm not sure what of the new show fits his requirement. Fear Her? Space Babies? Love and Monsters? Maybe his closing time. But then I think his point was motivated by adults and sci-fi fans calling out his poor behavior. And I'm jumping to his point 16 as that continues his underestimation of children and contains a bit of sexism. There should be one female assistant only, and she should always be from planet Earth. And again, sadly, he's not the only one with this view, as RTD agreed, and I assume Moffat. The justification being that she's the portal character, and apparently children are so stupid that they can only understand the show if the companion, assistant, comes from the same place they do. This is why us Americans have never understood Doctor Who. How can I possibly comprehend a show if the assistant isn't from Chicago? Gareth continues his misunderstanding of children. Every kid watching needs to feel they could be the assistant. You know, when I played Robin Hood with my friends as a kid, which I did do, I, of course, wanted to be Robin's young, skillless assistant with no knowledge of Old England. Likewise, when we played superheroes, which we did, I was always dying to play Superman's powerless Chicagoan sidekick. Yeah, no. Obviously, I wanted to be Robin Hood and Superman. And for Doctor Who, kids want to be the Doctor, not the sidekick. Unless there's some bizarre cultural divide between Britain and the US, kids aren't feeling they could be the assistant. They're the Doctor. But that's concept again. So let's see how this specifically would have affected the show. No Rory, for 2 reasons. No Captain Jack or River, if they count. But let's go classic. Jamie is generally taken as one of the best companions of all time, and I agree. But he's a male, so no good. This also rules out Zoe, from the future, and Victoria, from the past. So every companion in a couple of the best TARDIS teams of all time don't make the cut. And no Ian. Huh. But it's the 4th Doctor who generally is considered to have the best companions of Classic Who. Sarah Jane would be allowed, and she was very good. But that's it. Leela, a fan favorite and a favorite of mine. Nope, she's from another time and another planet. Romana 1 and 2, they're Time Lords, or Time Ladies, so nope, can't have them. Because certainly children were deeply confused at the time. Yeah. Oh, and she should usually be the only person under 30 around. That seems to be a pointless restriction on writers. It means no episodes around wars, as soldiers tend to be in their 20s, but he's also implying the assistant should be under 30. Young women only need apply. So Donna was too old to be an assistant. Yeah, who wants Donna Noble in the show? It's not like season 4 was well received. Gareth goes on. She should not be special or significant in herself. In the broadest terms, more often than not, I can agree. But as a rule, no. This is clearly his jab at Clara. Of course, it also takes out Amy, and probably Donna again. So, season 5 was just a complete failure. Too bad people liked it. A point of a different nature, but once again probably meant as a jab at Clara. Nobody should ever be revived from the dead. There must be no parallel universes or alternate realities, or time trickery. Again, part of this isn't horrible. Not if it was a suggestion to follow, unless you have a good reason not to. But as a rule, no. It's the last bit I'm really thinking about. No time trickery in a time travel show. Huh. Oh, where do we start? Well, that gets rid of Blink. Yeah, no one liked Blink. And Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead. And, oh yeah, Heaven Sent, because all his points rule out Heaven Sent. Turn left, the Pandorica opens, the Big Bang. So many. Yeah, why do clever things with time travel in your time travel show when you could just use it as bland standard transportation? Let's go on. I'm not going to respond to his point. He, Doctor Who, is never funky, with it, or down with the kids. Because you don't respond to actual text written in an actual publication that reads, with the kids. It kind of answers itself. However, I certainly do want to say something to his point that there should be no stories about Doctor Who himself, the TARDIS, and the Time Lords, the series Mythos, etc., and overarching narratives in general, as they are a turnoff. One can clearly go too far with Mythos and overarching narratives, though with the recent seasons, I don't think the problem was going too far, but with how it was done. Execution, not concept. But no Mythos, so no The Day of the Doctor. One of the most popular episodes. But nope. Also looks like this would rule out The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Yeah, it would rule out about 50 stories. As for no episodes about Doctor Who himself, Again, Gareth really doesn't want the Family of Blood or Heaven Sent to exist. This is also going to knock out Dalek, or does he really not know what that episode is about? This might knock out the entire Eccleston era, which was about the Doctor overcoming his trauma. And no stories about the TARDIS. Yeah, because who likes the Doctor's wife? Most people? Oh, well, that's a problem then. And this merges with another of his points. There should be no mention of any previous Doctor Who or assistant. So no episode should ever address anything that happened, or anyone. At which point, I'm thinking Gareth doesn't understand how drama works, or a franchise. He's confusing Doctor Who for a sitcom, as those often, though not always, so it shouldn't be an unbreakable rule, ignore their past. So yeah, the Dick Van Dyke Show worked very well not mentioning previous episodes. Although it did on occasion. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, on the other hand, referenced the past, mythos and characters, quite often. Once again, this knocks out Heaven Sent. Why does he dislike that episode so much? And out goes School Reunion. I suppose we'd only have to edit Pyramids of Mars, though I love its reference to a past companion. In those 2 points, he's lobbying for the jettisoning of 60 years. Much of it loved. Why? Yes, every episode should be good now, should not rely on nostalgia or fan service. But that's a different matter. He's ignoring that previous events and characters affect things. That much of the drama comes from that. The original Mission Impossible is the only show I can think of that pulled that off, and it's a very different show. I think this all goes back to his insisting the show should be a trifle. No thought, no depth, no development. Which also fit with 2 more points. Doctor Who does not have a moral mission, and he does not make plans. And Doctor Who cannot steer the TARDIS. At all. Ever. So he's envisioning a show where one character with little or no personality or background, with a young female sidekick with no personality or background, pop into a new location each week for no reason, deal with some problem that affects them in no way, rinse and repeat. I'm sure he thinks that's how the classic show worked. He's wrong. But it's all drawing toward one point. Attempts at profundity and social commentary should be resisted as strongly as attempts at sentimentality. Yes, Doctor Who should be a show about nothing. That's what he's advocating for. Lowest common denominator pablum for children he doesn't respect. And he's completely missed what the show has been for 60 years. Why people have loved it. With his suggestions, the show would have been cancelled in 1963. It survived and thrived because in '63 they produced an anti-fascism parable. Yes, social commentary is why we have the show. Always has been. We had environmentalism, vegetarianism, pacifism, and anti-corporate power in the 70s. Opposition to big pharma and corporate greed, anti-colonialism, pro-indigenous rights, and pro-animal rights in the 80s. Pro-immigration and anti-populism in the noughts. Again, anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism in the 2010s. And civil rights pretty much all of the time. But like most right-wing self-declared victims, who get very upset when they say they hate some people and everyone doesn't applaud, he missed all that. Yeah, they don't see that any commentary existed until the Doctor was a woman, and the Doctor was black, and a trans character existed. Those they see, and it makes them unhappy. And Gareth is unhappy. The show is those messages, that commentary, along with character. A whole lot of character development. It's not just empty calorie adventures, movement for movement's sake. It's adventures holding commentary and character. That's the show we love, and that's the show he doesn't want. His is another of those unpleasant voices, and one we don't need to listen to. And I'll be back with some less ranty Doctor Who content. And as always, I could use those likes or subscribes.